Okay. Yeah. Hi everyone. I think it's time for us to get started. Thank you very much for showing up to these events. So I'm Tumi Shiraji. I'll be the host and moderator for today. I'm standing in. I'm standing in place of Kevin Osborne. Yeah. So I'm so basically, this event, the aim of this event is to discuss community solar and its implication, especially from with the recently adopted US Inflation Reduction Act. We believe this is a timely topic, considering the significant increase in interest in decarbonization of the energy systems in the US. So a couple of minor housekeeping stuffs before we get started. So this event is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable with that, you could just like switch off your camera or something. Also, to give us like a brief, a rough idea of where everyone is joining in from, could you please type in your city or country where you're currently located? Just give us a rough idea of where we're all logging in from. Okay, Maryland. I see Maryland, Germany. California, Colorado, Kigali, that's Rwanda. Okay, I see someone from San Francisco, New York City, someone else from California. Okay. Someone from Jamaica. Okay, someone from New Hampshire. Okay, so it sounds like we have someone from like, I think about 3 or 4 continents. So that's like very encouraging. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll start with a brief introduction of EIN, what EIN does, and then after that, we'll give the panelists a chance to introduce themselves before we go into the panel discussion. Yeah. So EIN is a volunteer-based organization that tries to bridge smart minds and advance a more sustainable future. So EIN was founded in 2015 in Silicon Valley, and it's a global it's a global nonprofit working at the intersection of high-tech industry and the energy industry. We're actually a global network of energy professionals. So we're about 5,000 energy professionals with like a varied background. So we have like a lot of students, and we also have like, it varies from like students to like seasoned industry professionals. And really we have this primary goal to promote energy education, innovation, and to advance a more sustainable future. So we currently have members from every single continent. So we're about 5,000 members in about 100 regions, all coming together to try to achieve this goal of building a more sustainable future for us all. Yeah, so really what makes EIN different? So we try to work at the intersection of energy, technology, and sustainability. So really, we're trying to explore what are the right technologies, the right policies that we can use to really achieve this future that we all desire. So we are looking at, in the next few slides, I will discuss some of the past events that we've had, and you'll see the kind of range that we try to cover. But really, the central goal is really to look at the right way to combine these 3 aspects, right? Energy, technology, and sustainability. So we have 3 primary ways through which we do that. One is the Aspire Summit, which takes place once a year. Also, we have educational programs where we like invite professors from like from universities to like teach a particular interesting topic in the energy industry. And lastly, we have events such as the one that we're currently on, where we bring seasoned professionals from the industry to address a specific topic, a specific timely topic that is of interest to the broader community. So we are from the Ed Village. So like once again, we are just like different parts of the world. So I'm originally from Nigeria, and you will see like on the chart we have people dialing in from different parts of the world. Yeah, and then also we are a volunteer-based team, and also we try to partner with top-tier universities and a lot of renewable energy company. So just to name a few, we have some collaborations with UC Berkeley, Yale, and Stanford University, and also some environmental organizations like EDF. So really we try to bring in, we try to like really try to, I mean, we find a way to bring in all this knowledge from different aspects of society together. To help us drive towards a sustainable future. So our team, once again, is like very diverse, and here we're just showing a few of the leaders of EIN. So Shiyu is the co-president, and Wuting is also a co-president. And also, one thing to note once again is we are all like volunteers, all working towards this common goal. Lastly, we also have an advisory board that really help us to direct our focus. So they have this idea of like, they give us like a high level goal that we strive to achieve. Yeah. So what we do, we have 3 ways that we try to like impact knowledge. One is the Inspire Summit, which happens once a year. Also educational programs, and then lastly events like the one we are currently on. Yeah, so we're happy to collaborate with people that have we look forward to collaborate with people that are interested in this area. So on this slide, you can see our email address on our website. So also on our website, you can see details of our previous events that we've organized. So we look forward to future collaborations with the industry. Yeah, so if you want to host an event through EIN, you just have to like click on this link, which will be sent to the chat, and then we'll be happy to have further discussions. So moving on to today's event. So today's event is focused on community solar and its implication from the US Inflation Reduction Act. So we have 4 seasoned professionals that will be joining us in this panel discussion. So first we have Jenny Heather. So she's a modeling and analyst group manager at NWell. Then we have Sarah Moon. She's the senior director of community solar for DSD Renewables. Then we have Emily Torowski. She's the vice president of marketing at Neighborhood Sun. And lastly, we have Aryan, and is the president and CEO of Renewable America. So the aim of this webinar, we have 3 broad topic that we aim to discuss. One is to really understand the landscape of US community solar markets. Also, we also want to understand how the community solar project development process is like. So like, how do you go from origination to actually connecting people to the power system. And lastly, with the recently adopted US Inflation Reduction Act, we really want to discuss how does this particular bill factor into the future of community solar. Yeah, so we have 2 moderators for today. So I'll be starting, and in about 30 minutes time, Diana Swindler is going to come in to lead the discussion. At this point, I'll give a brief introduction on the moderators. So I'm Tumi Shiraji. I'm a 2nd-year PhD student at the Golisano Institute for Sustainability at Rochester Institute of Technology. My research is focused on assessing various ways to drive, to help developing countries, particularly those in sub-Saharan Africa, to meet their energy goals. So really, we are looking at things like energy access and the right way to achieve energy access in a way that is equitable. Yeah. And then joining us will be Diana Swindler. She's a sustainability professional with an international profile, and she has worked in a variety of professional fields, primarily in the energy industry. So she has worked on renewable energy operations, renewable energy research, energy policy analysis, and natural capital services. Yeah. So to start this program, to start today's events, before going in, we'd like to launch a brief poll. just to understand and gauge our understanding of community solar. So you should, in a few seconds, you should see a poll pop up on your screen. So would appreciate it if you could just answer the question. Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we have 57% of the participant has completed this survey. So we'll just wait until we get to maybe 70, 80% before we show the result. Okay, we're at 63%. I think would show the result now. Okay, yeah, so from the result, it looks like a lot of people actually understand what community solar is about, but we have a couple of people that are not very familiar with the topic. So our goal is that at the end of this events, we should have everyone move up to the very familiar side of the poll, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to a brief discussion, a brief definition of community solar before we pass it on to the participants to introduce themselves. So community solar, so what is community solar? So community solar refers to local solar facilities that are shared by multiple community subscribers who receive credit for their electricity bill for their share of the power produced. Yeah. So a key driving factor that really is driving the adoption of community solar is that it's really, you don't really have to have space on your roof, or you don't have to have actual capacity to install the solar yourself before you can benefit from basically you don't have to have the actual physical structure where you can benefit from solar systems. So really it helps to achieve that equity side of renewable energy generation and consumption. So currently in the US, about 5.1 gigawatts of community solar has been installed. And there's a forecast that in the next 5 years, we'll have another 5 gigawatts that will come online. So really this particular way is one of the key ways through which the grid is getting decarbonized. And I think that was the main motivation for us to explore this topic. Yeah. So, and the people that will be helping us really understand this sector will be Jenny, Sarah, Emily, and Hadi. So I would like you guys to please give a brief introduction about a brief idea. I'll give us a brief idea of what you are working on, your main motivation to start working on community solar, and also what you see the future of community solar being. Thank you.
Yeah, I can go first, I guess, since I'm listed first. So yeah, hi everybody, I'm Jenny Heater. I work at the National Renewable Energy Lab and have worked in the community solar space for about the last 5 years. And NREL's core role historically has been to support tracking the market and understanding where projects are happening, the value that subscribers are getting, and to support all types of entities as they try to develop more projects. So we support the National Community Solar Partnership run out of DOE. And yeah, personally, I think, my motivation coming into this space was from some work on voluntary products that utilities offer and seeing a lot of products that were all premium products and only saw 1% to 2% adoption, and then had some utilities and others start to innovate to provide products like community solar that can save people money and open up adoption to folks who don't have a rooftop to put solar on. So yeah, I am personally a community solar subscriber and live in a house with a shaded roof. So I'm supportive of providing options and access to folks like me, but also, folks who don't find rooftop PV suitable for any other number of reasons.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Would you like to go next, Sarah?
Yeah, happy to. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Moon. I'm the Senior Director of Community Solar for DSD Renewables. DSD is a pretty significant participant in the community solar space. We're an owner and operator of community solar assets. So we do develop some of our own projects in-house. We also purchase a lot of projects from earlier stage developers who aren't really interested or set up in to finance community solar assets and own and manage them for the long term. I've been in community solar for a little under 4 years now, and I kind of stumbled into it, but I really love the mission of the social impact piece being paired with the sustainability. And even when I joined in 2019, I couldn't imagine how big community solar has gotten. It's really kind of taken off like wildfire, thanks to support from groups like what Jenny's working on, the National Community Solar Partnership, and now all the tailwinds associated with the IRA. So couldn't be more excited to be here to talk to you all about this market. And I think the future is very sunny, to make a pun, for community solar.
Okay, thank you for that. Would you like to go next, Emily?
Certainly, yeah. Thanks so much for having us. This is a good opportunity to chat more about community solar. It's what I do primarily. So I'm Emily Torowski, and I'm the VP of Marketing at Neighborhood Sun. And so we are on the customer acquisition and management side of community solar. So we work with a lot of the solar developers and installers who look to kind of, acquire all of the subscribers, whether they're commercial businesses or residential households. And so, yeah, I do a lot of the marketing for that and love talking about it. I've been in the community solar space now about 5 years. And also I've, done a lot of communications around environmental adoption, specifically on like the adaptation side, but moving now more into kind of the climate change mitigation, working on renewables and stuff. It's really exciting to try to help folks understand why the adoption of clean energy is really going to help make huge waves in reducing our impact on the environment. So it's going to be a really exciting space for sure, especially after the IRA. It's community solar is just going to keep taking off, I think. So.
Yeah, thank you. Would you like to go next, Adi?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Aryan, President and CEO of Renewable America. I have originally started my career in the solar business about 17 years ago in 2005 back in Germany. Germany was that time one of the leaders in the renewable sector and deploying a lot of solar projects all over the country. And I came to the US in 2008, had projects first done in the East Coast, and then came to California about 5 years ago. And I have been, through my career, always involved into distribution projects, which are the smaller sizes. I like also calling them small utility scale. So the idea is we're not serving a big transmission grid. We are serving a neighborhood, basically a community. Now, the way of how this going to get benefit for the community really matters. And in California, community solar doesn't have a very long history. There is something else called community choice aggregator, which I'm happy to explain a little bit more about and dig into a little bit more deeper. But they are very exciting times, as the other panelists already mentioned. In September, there is a new bill that basically would make a big change for California in community solar. And that bill, for whoever wants to look it up, is called AB 2316. And that would basically create that value that was kind of missing here in California. I think because of this CCA law, maybe that's one of my assumptions. But CAISO, California ISO, is a little bit special in its way how it's grown. So we are definitely more excited about sharing what we know about community solar and where it can bring impacts. And just to kind of finalize my thought process here, we think that the community solar is the best way of deploying renewables. And the main reason is that we have from some of you already heard that if you don't have a roof, you can participate, but it also brings the impact to everyone in the community that really wants to be an activist and want to do changes versus someone just going islanding and kind of stepping out and say, I just have my own solar, my own energy storage, and I don't need to participate in the grid anymore. This is a little bit more challenging if, let's say, a bigger percentage of a community would do this. We will need the grid, and the community solar has still the idea of kind of working as a community together in a neighborhood.
Thank you very much for that, for your response. So before we go into the questions that we prepared, we would like to explain that the Q&A functionality of Zoom currently works. So if you have a question that you want to that you'd love the panelists to respond to, please just type it in the Q&A option, like just below your screen, and then we'll be happy to share it with the panelists. The first question I think is like a polling question that I think most people that hear about community solar would be interested in, and would like Jenny to respond to this. Like, where do you think the future market for community solar is? So, is there like a specific part of the US or a specific region of the world that you expect to really take off in the next few months or few years in this space?
Yeah, happy to kick this off. So yeah, we track projects and capacity installed by state currently, and I think an important piece of context for community solar is that it is often very driven by state policy or a willing utility. So in the state policy space, we have states like Minnesota, New York, and Massachusetts that are currently leaders in community solar deployment because of their policy frameworks. But we also have states like Florida and even Arkansas that have really strong utility-led programs that are coming out based on negotiations with stakeholders and approval by their regulators. So going forward, I think we definitely envision those two pathways as both growing. So we're seeing additional states adopt community solar policies or strengthen their policies, like was just mentioned with California. We imagine that additional states are going to be in that bucket of either improving or launching new policies. We also expect that some states without enabling policy will have a utility come in with a proposal for community solar or a green tariff option or something that looks like community solar as a way for them to be active in this space and try to offer a product to their customers that provides them value and the subscribers value as well. So yeah, high level, I guess, anticipate a lot of growth in this space. We did some work for Department of Energy as they were thinking about what goals are realistic or feasible even in the 2025 timeframe. And they set some pretty aggressive goals to reach the equivalent of about 20 megawatts of capacity by 2025. So for comparison, we're at about 5.5 gigawatts this year. So scaling up, dramatically that, would require changes to existing policy and some opening up of new markets. So yeah, maybe I'll wrap there. I'm sure others have folks on, specific markets where they're seeing activity and, state activity that might be supportive of new capacity deployments.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Is there anyone that wants to add to Jenny's very comprehensive response? Okay, yeah. So actually, I think Jenny's response actually ties in very nicely with the next question we asked that we have. So she was saying something about the impact that policies and government regulation would have on the deployment of this system. So I mean, so something that came to my mind as you were speaking was, does it sound like these systems are not financially like attractive on their own? So like the question I'm asking is like, do we need government interventions? Do we need grants? Do we need like enabling policies to facilitate the development of these systems? Or are they actually like, can they like stand on their own? Can you have like a cost reflective tariff that makes sense to everyone? So I would like Adi to address this based on his experience developing community solar project from the ground up. So do you think these concept is financially attractive on its own, or does it have to like ride on the government policies or government interventions or grants?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and thank you for bringing this up, because financing is the key. Like, there are so many great ideas out there, so many good innovations, so many good thoughts and like, you know, visions. But in fact, the financing world need to pick those up and need to also agree with many of them. So financing is absolutely the biggest challenge, and I definitely think that there is more incentive or other programs that the government can help with in terms of all the risks that a subscriber management for a community solar program will involve. So we're sitting with all the financiers at tables, and they challenge you, what if you lose a big percentage of your subscribers? I mean, I hate to do that example, but I think it's simple and it's for everyone understandable. If you compare it with Netflix, and we have seen that Netflix lost subscribers and then lost a lot of value in their shares at the stock market. So that can similarly happen to a project that is basically financed under community solar. So you never know why, you know, let's say 20-30% of your subscribers would kind of opt out and not extend the contracts. And then those financing and investment of a solar project is looking to a lifetime of 35 years. And yeah, I mean, how long can you keep a subscriber? And they might gonna even move out of your service territory. So I think the great thing is if they stay inside the area, then it's all right. That's really the upside of community solar, that the law allows you to still get the same credit and there are no changes. But what if you are stepping out of that? And we have seen that how many people have moved during the pandemic and decided to move out of state or even out of country. So those kind of challenges are still not fully resolved. It very much put a burden on the subscriber manager today. Like when it comes to financing, the first question for us is, do you use a subscriber manager that has references to show us in the last of couple years being pretty strong in getting enough subscribers signed up, kind of create a buffer for us? What happens if we lose a bigger number? So that are the challenges that we have to figure out. Now, I don't know exactly how the government can address that. There are many thoughts, but I think the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, is a great thing that just happens to us. For those that are not aware about it, it was about $400 billion that the solar industry got kind of incentivized with different opportunities, and community solar is addressed in that with additional tax credits. So that is helpful. I think everything can help. And it's definitely also showing that projects below 5 megawatt are in the interest of the government. So that was also a very important signal, I think, for financiers that were maybe questioning before our financial model, our business model, basically, why do we do small scale utility and not large like anyone else, 100 megawatts and bigger? So yeah, I think there is still work to do, but we are just at the beginning, and the market is huge and there are new markets coming up. So I'm absolutely excited about the future of community solar, and I think I want to also be witness of all this success and be part of that. So.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I think a point you raised that I found really interesting was you're talking about like the impact of subscribers, right? So like the part of being able to like keep your subscribers. So if you have like, if you design the project for X amount of subscribers, you don't want to, I mean, for 35 years, you don't want to lose like 30% of them 10 years into the project, which I think needs, I mean, it leads very well to our next question, which is like, is trying to understand like, what are the policies? Like, are there specific state policies that community solar developers should be lobbying for that would really help them in this subscribing aspect of it? Because it sounds like, I mean, really without the customers, there's really no points. I mean, like, you don't have a business without the customer, right? So I would like Emily to really draw on her experience marketing community solar to help us understand, like, are there specific policies? Are there specific things that community solar developers should be trying to get the governments or states to like approve that would really help to drive this industry forward?
Yeah, absolutely. There's like two main things that definitely come to mind. One is consolidated billing. So in some states with community solar, state regulated, the way it works is you see your solar credits when you're subscribed to a community solar farm on your normal electric utility bill. So you only pay what's the remainder of your electric utility bill that isn't covered by your community solar share. However, then you're charged for those community solar credits at typically the discounted rate from the subscriber organization or the developer and so forth. So it's a separate bill entirely. Not that it's always, too cumbersome, but it can be an issue for a lot of folks that are, really closely monitoring their bill payments and making sure they're just keeping track of those things. So having that dual bill system can really just kind of add to the chaos and headache a little bit of just understanding the concept of community solar and how it works. So that's definitely one piece I would say is big to advocate for. And the other is also kind of lowering the restrictions on low and moderate income communities. And I know we might get into that a little bit more later in this, but there's still a lot of requirements from either states or the public utilities that require low and moderate income residents to provide numerous ways to validate their income status or different means that they have to provide the bill or upload identification, fill out a tax form. There's all sorts of ways that just increase those barriers for already marginalized communities to try to get a renewable energy source. So between those two, those are kind of the big ones on the subscriber side, but if anyone has others to chime in on for like the development side too, I'll leave the floor open for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Emily, it sounded like you wanted to add something to this.
Oh, I was just gonna, if you were talking to me, I was just going to say I wholeheartedly agree with Emily that consolidated billing, the impact it's had on the New York market in particular has been profound. And I think in particular, the most important impact is that to subscribers, not having to have the hassle, like Emily said, of two bills and manage both of those makes a big difference. So exciting. Hopefully other states, I know that a lot of other states are talking about it, but no one else has quite implemented it the same way, maybe save for Virginia, which is sort of a new program that's just opening, but definitely hope to see more of that in other states.
Thank you for that. Yeah, also, I mean, it sounds like different states have different policies. So I think one question I have is like, is there any benefits to be derived from having like a standardized community solar policy that cuts across every state? Like, are we currently, I mean, the way it is right now, where certain states have like some policies that really attract a lot of investors, while others don't have those policies. If I mean, there were to be like a rule or a law that kind of standardizes these policies at like a federal level, can that actually really help the industry? Is that going to attract a lot of funding, a lot of like financing into the industry? So yeah, so Sarah, I would like to like understand your feelings on that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great for sure if there was some sort of homogenous policy across markets. But I think, the reality we live in the US with, I mean, a lot of, to what Jenny pointed out, like a lot of community solar has been driven by legislation in different markets, and different states have different priorities. They also have different ways of regulating energy markets that can impact how community solar programs can look and feel, and what different states' priorities are too. You know, like I think not every state has the same needs from what a community solar program will look like. So yes, I definitely think there are things that would be great if every state adopted. Like consolidated billing would be my number one like wish. If I, could talk to a genie today, I would want that. But I think the other just thing that I've seen that's been really challenging in different markets has been the LMI verification piece. Some states have done that, I think, in a way that is really strong and doesn't require a significant burden on the subscriber or the subscription manager. In a way, some states have done it in a way that tries to advance their equity goals, right, and be very specific about who the energy is serving. But what happens in reality is, New Jersey, for example, when they first started their community solar program, were asking essentially for, multiple years of tax returns from subscribers to sign up for a product that saves you 10 to 20% on your electricity bill. The burden of proof just didn't match the reality and the benefits, and it sort of, I think, soured that experience for a lot of subscribers. So if we could get a little bit more aligned on how to prove, that customers are LMI for states that have that requirement, that would make a big, big difference. And then, the only other thing I would add is, like, a lot of these programs, because they're highly incentivized, to what everyone spoke about earlier, to make up for the fact that there's all these extra costs and risks associated with delivering the energy to these end users, or delivering these savings to community solar customers. Some of them can create this sort of competitive model to get into the program that's very burdensome and hurts, project developers who are trying to build a healthy pipeline of these projects. Illinois, for example, just opened their next iteration of, community solar capacity yesterday, and the numbers that people were quoting for how many applications they had relative to the number of, megawatts they had available for community solar projects was pretty crazy, a 10x difference. So trying to be thoughtful about how that application process is set up in a way that doesn't create these crazy supply and demand booms and busts, which we just can't have, when we're trying to meet these very aggressive goals, like serving 5 million households, to Jenny's point, by 2030, I believe. So that was a lot, but I think this is a very the topic we all feel passionately about, probably.
I thank you so much for that comprehensive overview of the challenges, I guess, and the opportunities in this sector. Yeah. So I'm coming back to Jenny. I think one thing that typically comes up when you talk about solar system, especially large scale, megawatt scale solar system, is the environmental impact, right? Because you are taking land that could be used for other purposes, land that could be used as a farmland or something. So are there, do you think community solar as any significant, is it posing a significant risk to land use in the US? Do you think the way these systems are springing up, do you think there's a chance that it could be competing with land that could be used for other purposes? So are there environmental concerns, particularly as it concerns land use, that we should think about, or we should look for solutions to as we scale up these systems?
Yeah, I think when we're thinking about installing renewable energy, there will always be land use considerations, and whether that's a community solar project or wind project or a fossil fuel project, there will be land use considerations. Some of the stuff I've heard in the community solar space has been more around how could states provide incentives to develop on brownfields or develop on rooftops or other land that, is not infringing on other ways like farming or, agriculture. So yeah, there are some states that, create a tiered incentive system and allow for, bonus credits if you're on brownfields or, things like that. I think that's one way, states or utilities could think about land use issues. I think the other piece that comes up with siting is just like local regulations and local interest, and some communities may be really supportive of a clean energy transition, but not want, their open space forests to be cut down for a solar project. And, that's a reality of local siting and regulations and permitting processes and things like that. But I think in general, community solar developers are maybe a little bit more in touch with community interest and needs than folks developing utility scale projects, because community solar developers are either subscribing people themselves or contracting for subscriptions. So there's I would say, more of a tie to what's going on in the community and kind of understanding that context in a way that, some other projects may just have a different take on. Maybe just one last thing on that is that NREL also does a lot of work looking at agrivoltaics, so siting PV with agriculture, and thinking about, are there, beneficial pathways there where by, putting PV, you can provide shade to whatever you're growing underneath, which maybe reduces evaporation of water, just sort of designing systems to provide benefits to both the PV system and agricultural production. So there's definitely research in that space to understand, how could that work at scale?
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. So I wanted to come back to what Emily brought up earlier on the equity concerns, right? So like you have these systems, but they are probably not accessible by low income people, right? So I think the question I have is, are there certain policies you think that could actually address this concern? Because right now, with the way like the setup is, I think the low-income earners are probably not able to access the benefits of community solar. Are there specific policies that you think governments and policymakers should be thinking of that could help bridge this gap and help really help us have like an equitable distribution of this system?
Sure. For me to.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, certainly like some of the grants and such that help increase the, the incentives back to the low and moderate income subscriber. So, for example, in cases like in Maryland, where we've got some solar farms where the normal amount is anywhere from like a 5-10% discount to your electricity costs. Some of the low and moderate income incentives based on some of the grants available for this actually allow for a 30% discount in places in Western Maryland, which is huge and can make a huge difference for some folks. So I think that's one of the main policy pieces I'd say that could really help go towards increasing that for LMI communities.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. So
I might, if you want, I can jump in here too. I have another thought that might add some value, and it's financing is in the solar industry split it in two parts. One is like a long-term investor, and the other one is a tax equity investor, because the tax credits that are assigned to a project, they are usually challenged to be monetized, like who can use those tax credits. And for that, you need another third party to add in that. It's called a tax equity investor. So for us, we could have this direct payment. That it's one of the ideas that was trying to be done by the Biden administration since the last year. It kind of ended up for nonprofit organizations and governmental organizations only, and not for any developer. The direct payment would be a big benefit, because then you don't need to create all the risk mitigation that a tax equity investor has. because of community solar. Tax equity investors are in general less familiar with the technology and with the industry in general. And for them, it's definitely community solar another challenge. So I think if direct payment would be at least exempt for community solar ideas, that would be very much appreciated by most of the developers. It would make much more sense and simplify the projects a lot.
Okay. Yeah, and I think Adi, I'm coming back to what you said now about like what you could do to increase interest. I mean, increase investors' interest in this area. I mean, from your profile, you worked in Germany, like you developed a community solar. I mean, you developed energy projects in Germany and like I think some other countries in Europe. Are there specific things that you think the US could learn from this part of the world in terms of?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I think when you are living in Germany, you have a lot of ideas and you think, why does not US make everything so complicated? But when you come here and learn about this country is huge, it has like many different states, it has many different policies, and it's like it cannot be simplified easily. So, and I do understand why most incentives are driven by tax credits. That is absolutely a special thing for the US. You don't have that in any other solar market as of today, as far as I know, at least the most important ones. And I believe what is making it pretty much challenging is the idea to basically create incentives for local content. That means for local manufacturers, local suppliers, and there isn't much in the US. So when it comes to solar panels that are financeable, we are always relying on other panels that are coming from other countries because there is not a lot of gigafactories here in the US, and they are just capable of keeping those high prices and meet those standards that a financier needs. And then you have those tariffs like Section 201 and Section 301. They create a huge problem for us as a developer because you just have much higher prices compared to any other industry in Europe or even anywhere else because of those tariffs and the difficulties to bring in products to the US. So I'm a friend of supporting local manufacturers, and I even tried at one point in my career to have my own module manufacturing. But I think the way how you want to do it is important. And as this specific moment, it's basically hurting more the development of renewable projects. It makes it expensive. So that's something that slows down the deployment in general, and especially a project like a community solar project is even more sensitive than a 100 megawatt project when it comes to pricing.
Thank you for that. I think that kind of leads nicely to the next question I had for Sarah. So yeah, so I understand that like you developed like a lot of community solar projects across various states. So like I was trying to look into community solar and the restrictions that each state has. So it seems there's like a limit on the amount of the capacity for different states. So are there specific ways that these particular restrictions impact the business models of community solar developers, right? Because they're like constantly building business models, trying to find the best way to maximize your return on investment. Are there specific things or specific things that you would like to be able to play with in terms of the policies that will really help to attract attract investment into this sector? So really, I want to understand how the state dynamics impedes the development of community solar.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what's really important for us, both as a developer of renewable energy assets and community solar assets specifically, but also as a long-term owner and operator, is some sort of predictability, right? In whether, what your incentive is going to look like, what your bill credit value and ultimate revenue for the project is going to look like. And markets that make that tough, in terms of not knowing whether you're going to be able to secure, an initial spot in the program, right? I mean, this is community solar is sort of breaking open the traditional, utility to end electricity customer model, right? Like we're offering customers renewable energy outside of, a direct connection to their home or business. And so utilities sort of have to be, in some instances, when we get to also participate in the programs as independent developers and owners of community solar projects, utilities sort of have to be coerced to participate, and it's not like we can just pick up and decide either from a cost basis, right? We do need incentives because this is a much more costly, process just from a development and again, ownership standpoint to get these assets in the ground and deliver this value to customers. But also, I can't just sell electricity and deliver a savings on a customer's, utility bill without the utility's participation, and they have to be regulated by state groups. So having a more open flow of capacity, I think like different states have tried to approach this in different ways. Maine started out without a cap in their program. So, anyone up to a certain point could apply into the program and develop their projects. And that created like a really nice flow of development and projects coming online in the beginning. The only restriction that we ran into in Maine was the availability of customers. It's not the most populated state in the U.S. And limitations of the transmission distribution system, right? So eventually interconnection costs became so untenable that those projects couldn't deliver. So it's a very hard problem, but if we could create a less start and stop process with these markets and help developers know where to invest in terms of states and programs, and have those actually come to fruition, you'd see less, I think, like boom and bust. And what we have today is like people start speculating in states when there's a whisper of a policy, right? Because everyone wants to participate in this. It's a great way to expand your business and your pipeline into new markets. But it gets a little bit overboard. But incentives from the federal, side help a ton. And so I think the IRA is going to make a huge difference in helping people to, maybe helping states to lower subsidies a little bit, but still making these projects pencil so that there's just more of a piece of the pie, right? And more projects can participate and therefore serve more customers. So yeah, again, I guess just in summary, very difficult problem to solve, but I think different states are trying to be creative. And I guess a final thought, because I'm also super excited about California as a potential community solar market. Like I already mentioned, a bill just passed, AB 2316, that directs the PUC to evaluate creating a more permanent program, community solar program in California, which would be huge. And California is trying to get really creative about incentives and have the underlying bill credit be based on something that they're calling the avoided cost calculator, which is really trying to measure the value to Californians of every incremental kilowatt hour produced, rather than saying community solar is worth the same as the full retail rate that an individual subscriber would get. So I think states are trying to find that balance, and I'm optimistic that we'll get there.
Okay. I think that was like really, really comprehensive. Thank you so much for your response. Yeah, I think one thing you mentioned was this idea of competition between traditional utilities and community solar developers, right? Because it sounds like there's a limited pool, right? And they both seem to be attacking it from different angles. So I wanted to explore this particular idea a bit further. So from Emily's perspective, I want to understand how has this competition between utilities and community solar developers, have you seen it play out on the ground in terms of actual electricity users? And also I wanted to also understand it from the government perspective, which I think I would direct that at Jenny to understand from your work. I'm working with the Department of Energy. Have you seen that strife or that competition between traditional utilities and community solar developers. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, okay, yeah. If you would like to go first, Emily.
Yeah, no problem. On the subscriber side, the selection or choice options, I think there's like it's almost like a double-edged sword. There's a really great excitement to being able to select which community solar farm, especially if there are multiple in your utility territory, to be able to join. And for each subscriber, there's differing reasons. For some, we've found that they don't, really care about the incentive. They actually just care that it's 5 miles down the road from them. Or some really care about the savings impact. So when there's one that has like a, really high discount on their, discount applied, that's going to be much more worthwhile for them. So it's tricky. And in some cases too, we've had to do opportunities or options where that, we almost help make the choice for the customer, because it's also a point of still uncertainty and confusion for a lot of subscribers of, okay, what does this solar farm mean in different, in relation to this one? And how come I can't be a part of this one in this utility? And so there's a lot of confusion still in education that needs to take place around it. So kind of helping to guide the choice also helps. So it's a hard answer to give in a way of just like the competition's very healthy, because it helps increase some of the incentives and the terms that are there for the subscriber, for the end user, so that whether there's like lower credit requirements or no cancellation fee or other things like that make it more valuable for the user. But at the same time too, it's we want to help a lot of as many developers as we can to make sure too that it's subscribed effectively across the board, that that we keep this healthy competition kind of existing. It's beneficial, I would say. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised to hear that like price is not the key determinant in terms of energy, because I would expect that the lowest kilowatt hours is what you would go for. So for instance, like I think a couple of weeks ago, I got an email from my utility that there's an access. I could access a community solar, and the first thing that came to my mind was, how can I compare this dollar per kilowatt hours to what I'm currently paying? So I'm actually surprised to hear that price is not like.
Yeah, we're surprised. Like, we're grateful too. There's so many early adopters, and there are a lot of people that are caring more about the environmental impacts of this, that they want to see this happen, that they want to, be a part of it to make sure that it's just doing the right thing for our planet. But yeah, we've also seen in the case too, a lot of people in these instances are paying premiums through third-party suppliers as well. So some of these individuals are already used to paying, to like a couple times more on their, cents per kilowatt hour for, renewable energy that's, from a third-party source and such like that. So it's, something where it's like, oh, great, there's an incentive. Cool. I would have already paid more for it, so it's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Do you see a difference between like, do you see that like low-income earners are more likely to have price as their primary determinant versus medium-income earners, or is
Absolutely. Yeah. Price is a key driver still for low and moderate income communities. But the hard part of that too is it's, a market that's also been abused and used in the past by similar entities trying to say they're going to reduce their costs on X, Y, and Z and utilities and such. And so they're already wary of us coming in to say, no, we have a really good savings opportunity for you. Trust us, this is good. And it's hard to market that. So, not just from the price point, but also like coming in and from the community element as well. And we can get to that probably, I'm sure, in another question. But, I like what Sarah, you mentioned too, with like what California is trying to do is demonstrate the benefit of this just beyond the per kilowatt hour price, that how much it's benefiting the overall community, either between the organizations involved, the residents, the environment, the local land, and so forth. There's numerous different ways that price is only compounded upon. So yeah, it's a couple different unique ways we've marketed with it.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm moving. So I'm moving to you, Jenny. Do you see this I mean, from the high level, from like this competition between utilities and community solar developers, do you see? I mean, have you seen like any ways that the government is trying to like intervene, or are there specific things that have been explored? I mean, that have been explored to avoid this sort of fighting for the same markets thing?
Yeah, most of the effort has been on the state side. And so in some states, I'm here in Colorado, and the stakeholders here have tried to, come to some sort of middle ground or like compromise solutions where the utility is active in certain parts of the community solar market. So they're allotted, a certain amount of capacity that they can own and subscribe themselves, and then the rest is open for third-party subscribers. So there have been, yes, I think some, conversations around what is that sort of compromise or middle ground that could exist. In most other states, they're either third-party developers or they're utilities, and it's one or the other that we're seeing. And from a subscriber perspective, I think some of the key issues are around the value proposition. Does that look different if it's a product offered by a third-party developer versus a utility? The kind of community feel of the project, like is it project sited somewhere in their county versus far away in the utility service territory? Questions like that are from a subscriber perspective, I don't know that they necessarily care as much about the business model conversations between utilities and third-party developers, but they care about, are they able to get a better product, or, a product that is more marketed to them or more accessible to them in other ways.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I think following up what you said about a better product, I want to direct this question at to Adi. So in terms of better product, like, is there any like specific difference between the product that community solar developers are offering versus what the main grid is offering, right? So for instance, I mean, like, drawing from your electrical engineering background, are there like power quality differences, or are there like reliability differences between the product offerings of these two I guess sides of the market? Yeah. So have you seen any of those things play out in the US?
Sure. So I'm happy to talk a little bit about technology. I think when it comes to a community solar project, they in general smaller sizes. So and you might have less space because maybe you're trying to be in more suburban area where there's some neighborhood around you and some residential places, and you have like access to some housing there and other community members. So that is kind of the smaller footprint creates some challenges towards figuring out how you have a higher ground coverage ratio, and how you can use the area better and just optimize the capacity, and the type of module matters. So we try to really be very specific on our choices on the technology, and we use high power modules versus maybe some lower end that you can put out in a desert where it doesn't matter so much that you take the highest wattage out there. So efficiency is important. Numbers matter a lot. In terms of inverter technology, I don't think that there is a certain necessity for sizing of the inverter. I heard about those things back in Germany. In fact, we really had investors signed up. It was not compared with community solar, but it was kind of a more like a shared investor, like think about crowdfunding, that kind of ideas. And then you use string inverters versus the central inverter that are more common. And then you have better separation. You can kind of say this inverter is for that investor and that inverter. I don't think that community solar is going to ever work like that. So that level of going into that deep of technology separated that way is not necessary anymore. And I think that's pretty much it on terms of the structure. There is no real impact. I think just the general thought process of saying you want to be more efficient and more optimizing the system because of the limitations of land. That is the biggest impact. We also think that engineering can do a lot. Basically, in our company, we are using specific software that can optimize the layout in a way that we don't have impacts on the ground. So that means anything that is related to grading impacts, where you need to kind of flatten the area, push or pull the ground, that we try to avoid with special software and the special solutions out there that can follow the terrain. But we are still using single axis tracker that follow the sun. And I think that's pretty special. And there we're trying to be a little bit unique and different. And counties, they love that a lot because the impact on the ground are definitely a concern of any community member. So another thing that I just came into my mind, I want to share that too, maybe less related to technology, is permitting process is always difficult, especially in California with the high environmental level requirements that are out there with so-called SECA process. What we have seen a lot of times is projects get appealed by the neighborhood. They don't like the idea of putting a huge impact out there, but the community solar can address, hopefully, and get more everyone engaged in a way that they feel that they can be participating in this solar project versus they just feel someone else comes from some like big money and putting it out there and just make their own money, and the community doesn't have an impact, and basically trying to just fight that project. So we are hoping that, especially for our project, that might create definitely a better acceptance inside the community.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and I think like your last point on the impact on the community, actually wanted to it leads nicely to the next question I have, which is on the Inflation Reduction Act. So I was trying to read up on it, and I think there are probably two possible benefits that we could get from the IRA. One is like the benefits on the subscriber, and then also looking at the benefit to the mini grid developer. So like the benefits like upstream and like downstream, right? So I wanted to get Emily's perspective on the impact of the IRA on community solar adoption in terms of like the benefit it would provide to the actual final consumers. And then from Sarah's perspective, I wanted to understand is there, what's the implication of the IRA for community solar developers? So basically the same question, but looking at it from like different perspective, from a developer's perspective and also from a consumer's perspective. So would you like to go first, Sarah?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think the IRA is awesome. IRA, Inflation Reduction Act. It's really exciting for our industry. There's tons of studies out there that show just a general uplift this is going to have for, especially the smaller scale solar projects, all the way up to, kind of 5 megawatts, what we call distributed generation, what Artie's calling small utility scale. It's just profound. And I think what's really cool for community solar is specifically there's this incentive and adder, in addition to, the fact that they qualify for the additional, ITC going up to 30% as a baseline. But on top of that, there's 2 other adders that are specifically focused on community solar. One is whether your project is located in a low income census tract, that's defined in the IRA, that's worth an additional 10%. So your project should be able to earn a 40% ITC overall. And then the other is if you actually are delivering financial benefit to a majority of the subscribers on a community solar project. And in that case, you can qualify for a 20% adder, so you can get a 50% ITC. All of that is I think anyone who's worked in this industry for a while can just say how impactful that's going to be in terms of the scale and, making projects work and come to fruition and be real that wouldn't otherwise maybe be able to. So I think that's great. We're waiting on guidance from Treasury on the details. The devil's always in the details. Whether you're developing a new community solar program in a state and then the program rules come out and you're like, oh my gosh, that's going to make it so much harder than what it needed to be. So I really hope that Treasury is thoughtful and their application is incentive. And again, they don't create this, sort of boom bust, situation in the market where tons of people want to go after this incentive. But it's only limited to, and right now that's the only part of the new incentives that are capped. So there's 1.8 gigawatts of incentive available, for these sort of community solar oriented incentives, which sounds like a big number, especially compared to the current size of the community solar market. But I should say that other types of projects will also be able to sort of compete for those incentives, including residential rooftop solar, which, we need more of all of the above to solve our, sustainability targets. And I'm certainly not against, rooftop solar, but one thing that community solar does is it just expands, like we've been talking about, expands access, expands equity. There's the majority of people are locked out of the residential rooftop market. And so I also hope that Treasury is thoughtful in how they allocate capacity to the different market segments in terms of, impact. If anyone from Treasury is listening, put that also, it's my second wish of the day, out into the universe. But either way, it's going to be a big deal. It's very positive, and we're all very grateful for it.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we hope. We hope someone is listening today to answer your prayers, I guess. Yeah. Would you like to address it from the consumer's perspective, Emily?
Sure. I think really what that means is almost like kind of a trickle down effect, because how it's impacting the developers so much in regards to developing on more brownfields or, unusable land, just makes it, that much more enticing as well for a lot of our, as I was kind of mentioning, the like early adopters and actual, like folks that are getting more and more invested in green alternatives and caring more about that. That just makes it all the more enticing to want to support a community solar farm that's benefiting, in other ways, whether it's, also supporting a lot of low and moderate income residents. So when there's more incentives for the developers to support, having more, allocations or segments of the solar farm designated for low and moderate income residents, it just kind of spreads that effect outwards and allows for just more community members and residents to be able to join these projects, have more opportunities, have more choices in the market. So it's really kind of just a trickle down effect, really.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it sounds like it's good news for like everybody involved, right?
Yeah.
It seems all sides benefit from it. Yeah, so we are like running out of time. So the last question I want to direct at Adi before we open it up to the audience is, so actually, I'm asking this question for like selfish reasons, actually. So like I said earlier, I'm from Nigeria, and really looking at the growth of community solar, I'm really like excited about the possibility of deploying such a system in the developing world, right? So like being able to have this system where you don't have to rely on like unreliable access from the utility. You can actually like have developers come in and actually connect directly to the customers. So Adi, I want to hear your opinion, or should I say your forecast on how do you think community solar would play out in the rest of the world, with a focus on the developing world, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, because I'm very selfish and I want to talk about that. Sorry.
No, it's absolutely a good question, and I love to see it everywhere in the world. So let's say it that way. I think we have not touched base about CCAs, because that's the other side of how communities can still benefit, and I think Massachusetts is the first state in the US that started 20 years ago, the community choice aggregator law. And then a couple of years later, California followed. And now there are a couple more states. And in California, we have about 24 CCAs established. The reason why I'm bringing this idea of as an alternative structure for other countries to not just think about only community solar is that what CCA law allows is the same day that a CCA is signed up, and only a CCA can be launched by a county or a city, so it has to be a governmental connected entity. But in fact, the moment that they are signed up, everyone is automatically opt in. And that's the big difference of versus you have to go one by one sign subscribers. So I think a combination of CCA and community solar is the perfect and balanced thing for the renewable industry. And both have their advantages and disadvantages. I'm not the one that I say like community solar is better or CCA is better, but I'm just thinking when you talk about countries like Africa and they want to do that, they definitely should take a look at both and see where it makes more sense, because the CCA law makes it much simpler. And it's showing how successful it can be here in California with the 24 CCAs, and almost 40% of the load is supplied by CCAs. That's definitely the success for the future. But there are areas in California their CCAs cannot be established, and it doesn't make any sense, and their community solar can perfectly catch on. I think because of the challenges of subscriber management and getting that financed as an alternative to start with a CCA, it might be for those countries easier, because I know how challenging it is for them to get financing. And I'm originally from Iran too. It's the same thing. When always my people from Iran call me, I said, like, it's not a country where financing works. And I think in Africa, it's mainly financed by Chinese companies, as far as I understand the solar industry there. And I think they would appreciate very much to see structures like CCAs first, and then at the same time, community solar. That's just my thought. And maybe there are better ways, but I believe maybe the other panelists might have also some thoughts how you can get started in such a country with community solar.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on that, Sarah, Emily? Yeah.
I wish I had good ideas. So I've only ever operated in the US market, but I'll let you know if anything comes to mind.
Okay. Thank you so much for the really comprehensive response. I think I know enough about community solar now to like write a paper on it or something, because it sounds like there's like a wealth of knowledge that we've been able to really get from you guys over the past like hour and a half. So really it's been a really interesting session for me. So I would like to open it up to the audience. Is there like anyone that has a particular question that we did not cover or that we skipped out on? I can't see any question in the Q&A, so I don't know. Okay, I see someone's hand like raised. Okay, would you like to go ahead?
Hi, hi, Thomas. Hi, Emily, Ardi, and Sarah. This was a very exciting conversation, and I learned a lot about today's session. My question is very related with what Ardi mentioned before about how difficult it is to get access to the tax credits as a project developer. So I was wondering, how do you see the role of green banks in the securitization of loans in order to have access to that financiation from the capital markets?
Is there someone you want to address that? Or should we just open it up to everyone? And if you want to go for it, feel free to go.
I can jump in. I mean, I think I was a little distracted by Kevin's question in the Q&A, so typing a response. But I think what I heard is, like, what are the challenges associated with the tax equity market as it works today in the US? And I have a colleague who described it to me a long time ago in a way that has just always stuck with me. And that's, essentially the federal government is giving us these incentives, right? Associated with a tax break, 30% of the cost of the project, with some restrictions, you're able to now claim, as a benefit on your taxes and cover some of your tax liability. There are only a few entities, mostly big banks in the US today, and some really big corporations that can take advantage of that. And so because you're limiting the marketplace and banks have a very limited view, like Artie's alluded to this a bunch, but they're very risk averse, as investors, which, it's probably exactly what we want, is people holding on to our finances. But for those of us in the renewable energy industry, sometimes that can be a bit of a frustration. And so my colleague described it as you're essentially selling, the government's giving you $100 worth of Dunkin' Donuts gift cards. And then you have to give that to a bank. And really what value is left is $80, right? Because you can't get $100 back if you sell a Dunkin' Donuts gift card to someone else. It's not worth as much as $100 in straight cash. So what Artie was saying about direct pay, definitely it's a bummer that didn't come through. The nonprofit and public entity market is still sort of a limited space of people who can actually take advantage of those incentives. And they have to have an equity and an ownership piece in these projects, which maybe isn't always the best way for a public organization or a nonprofit to spend their cash, and is to buy the ownership stake in this renewable energy asset. So it would be great if the tax equity market was opened up to more people and we could get closer to that $100 value for our Dunkin' Donuts gift card would be my recommendation.
Yeah, Sarah, I think it was great the way how you explained it. I like the idea with the Dunkin' Donuts, really good. So I would just try to add a little bit more thoughts to this. So tax credits needs to be used against tax liability. So I have to have certain tax liability on certain level, and there is like tax law is complicated in the US. And it needs to be federal liability, and then the amount that I can use and the way how I can use all those benefits on the tax side. That is exactly what Sarah was saying, kind of limiting the people, or let's say the companies, to maybe the big banks or the Fortune 500 listed companies. And that tax equity role is just on top of whoever wants to become the long-term owner. So that means because of this use of the tax credits to pass them through in a way that the IRS would accept, that you need very complicated structures. And there is a well-known structure called partnership flip. There is another known structure, sales lease spec structure. I don't want to go into those details because they're like really a topic for itself, and it's complicated to understand. And the thing is that through those structures, you have to satisfy another third party, another investor on top of whoever wants to be the long-term owner. And he is extremely risk sensitive. So that party says, I don't understand anything about solar. I don't want to even know how you're doing this. Help me out here. I want to just get my money out and use my tax liability. And that's the whole point. So those structures are expensive to put in place. You need legal firms, you need special advisory firms who are capable of putting those structures out. And you have then to meet first the obligation to satisfy the requirements of the tax equity partner. And then after that, the long-term owner can basically step in and get also some benefits from the long-term investment. That slows down the whole internal rate of return and also makes the financing much more complicated and much more limited. That's the way that the US is not just dealing with renewable. They did that to the movie industry too. Like there are specific states that receive up to 50% of tax credits if you had done the movie there. And there are other industries taking similar approaches. But I think solar is specifically complicated because of the long lifetime and because it's a more different technology and not so much well known.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. I think one last question before we round off is about not in my backyard. So there seems to be a lot of interest in understanding how this affects project development, particularly solar project development. And I think Sarah gave a comprehensive answer to that. So do you want to follow up on that, Sarah?
Yeah, I don't really have a great solution, but this is a big issue, something we run into really frequently in markets. And I think, there are macro things that could be done to make it better. Permitting and land use issues and interconnection are, in my view, like the two biggest headwinds against the renewable energy industry today. And so some of that can be solved, with better incentives, like what the IRA has done, in the way of interconnection costs. But, you can't get through not being able to be issued a land use permit in a county or, a specific jurisdiction that just is very against renewables. And, where we've seen community solar today has been in a lot of pretty friendly states. And some of the new markets that we're expanding to are a little less comfortable with renewables, or they have a misimpression of, some of the detrimental impacts that they think that renewables in their neighborhood are going to create, to your point, Kevin. So definitely a big problem, something we need to work on as a collective. I'd love to see some sort of federal policy that changes land use permits, across the board. But to Artie's point earlier, like, US just doesn't work like that. We're a huge country, and each state has a lot of ownership, and in some ways that's great. And in other ways it makes issues like this really, really tough to manage.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, Adi, and Emily. It's been a very interesting session. I think I've learned a lot, like lots of new information. Yeah, so we are I'm 2 minutes past 7 p.m. Eastern time, my time. So I think we need to round up. So we would really appreciate it if you could fill this post-event survey, just to give us an idea of the things we need to improve for the next events. Yeah, but once again, thank you so much. It's been a really interesting session, and we look forward to connecting sometimes in the future. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, and feel free, if you want, you can share my email and contact information around for anybody who has questions that they weren't able to answer, I know, Sarah, you did awesome answering all those questions, so I'd love to connect with you afterwards. You pick your brain, some of that. You too, Artie. So great to meet you guys, and thank you so much for hosting this.
Yeah,
thank you, Emily. Yeah, thank you for setting this up. It was really a pleasure talking with all of you on the panel, and I hope it could create some added value for everyone that was interested in this topic.
Great. Thanks so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.